Anything from a tropical jungle to a luxurious beach can be creepy when humans imprint histories upon them. Whether it's supposed paranormal activity to tragedies, these places leave a lasting impact on visitors. Number 5. Views from the North Yungas Road in Bolivia are stunning. The road winds and overlooks the Amazon rainforest, but it only takes one wrong move for travelers to lose their lives while taking in the view or trying to navigate oncoming traffic. Hundreds of people have fallen to their deaths, and not even the most careful travelers can be safe. The road's history began with tragedy. A border dispute between Bolivia and Paraguay sparked a brutal conflict. Thousands of soldiers were captured as prisoners of war. Many were put to work building the North Yungas Road. The 43-mile-long road was carved into the sides of the mountain. The road has countless twists and hairpin turns, and an elevation change of thousands of feet. It connects the Bolivian capital of La Paz to the town of Coroico at the mouth of the Amazon rainforest. For decades, it was a vital connection for the region. It was the only way for wood products, fruit, and coca from the region to get to the capital. Because of the large vehicles carrying products that were forced to use the road, which is barely wide enough for one lane of traffic, many vehicles were too large to maneuver around the narrow twists. They, the products, and the driver would often plummet over the edges. Up until 1994, around 300 people a year lost their lives trying to traverse the road. The narrow, twisting road is only made more dangerous by the weather. The hot and humid air from the forest hitting the mountain creates heavy rain and fog, which frequently causes landslides and waterfalls, washing away anything and everything in their path. The poor road conditions combined with the weather earned the road the title of the world's most dangerous road for several decades. Hundreds of crosses stand as a memorial to those who have lost their lives, and a constant reminder of just how dangerous taking the route is. The Bolivian government has recently built a new, safer road, so travelers are now mostly thrill-seeking tourists. The death rates have since dropped, but that makes the road no less terrifying, and the constant reminder of the tragedies that have taken place there no less creepy. Number 4. Cemeteries and graveyards are inherently eerie, but there are few cemeteries with stories as creepy as that of the Christchurch Parish in Barbados. The original Christchurch Parish Church was built in 1629, but was destroyed in a flood about 40 years later. The remains that were buried in the graveyard were scattered by the floodwaters across nearby Dover Beach. Since then, the church has been rebuilt 4 times, each time a natural disaster causing significant damage. It was during the time of the second iteration of the church that the Chase Vault was built. The vault was built in 1742 from carved stone and concrete, half above ground and half below. A blue slab of marble seals the tomb. The first person to be laid to rest in the vault was Elizabeth Elliot, the wife of the owner, who passed away in 1792. Elizabeth would never be joined by her husband, as the tomb was sold to another family. In 1807, the tomb was reopened for Thomasina Goddard to be placed inside. To their surprise, workers discovered Elizabeth and her coffin were missing. The disappearance would never be explained, but it was assumed that Elizabeth's husband had moved her when he sold the vault. The following year, the tomb was purchased by the Chase family, and the first member of the family was laid to rest there. This time, there were no disappearing coffins. Thomasina was exactly where she was supposed to be. 4 years later, another member of the Chase family passed away. The woman took her own life, supposedly due to the fact that her father, Thomas Chase, was abusive. Again, nothing was out of place when the body was placed in the tomb. Things changed when Thomas Chase himself passed away a few months later. The tomb was once again opened for the patriarch of the family to be placed inside. This time, though, the heavy lead coffins of the two members of the Chase family had been thrown about. None of the remains inside the coffins had been disturbed. Nothing was stolen, and there was no evidence of tampering from the outside. The coffins were rearranged to where they had originally been placed. Thomas Chase's casket was placed inside, and the tomb was sealed again. In 1816, the vault was reopened for another casket to be placed inside. Again, the 4 coffins that were already inside had been thrown about. The tomb was watertight, but even if water had been able to seep into the vault, it wouldn't have been a significant amount enough to move the heavy coffins. The governor eventually stepped in and moved all of the bodies to individual graves below ground, hoping to put an end to the apparent paranormal activity. The tomb remains empty to this day, with nothing but weeds and dead leaves inside. Number 3. Poveglia Island is possibly one of the most concentrated areas of misery and suffering in the world. The island lies in the Venetian lagoon, not far from the cultural hub that lends to the lagoon's name, but the atmosphere couldn't be further from that of a tourist hotspot. The tiny island first entered the history books in the 5th century AD, but even before that, many sources claim it was a quarantine island for those suffering from the plague during the Roman Empire. By the time the Black Death was brought to Italy, the island had been uninhabited for several decades. With Venice being a trade hub, the plague hit the city hard. Half the city's population caught the disease. First, people who died from the disease were taken to the island. Then people were shipped there while they were still alive and left to die. The healthy population became overly cautious, and many people with only minor symptoms were sent to the island against their will. There, they had no choice of surviving whatever illness they were suffering from. Thousands of people, possibly tens of thousands, were buried in mass graves and their bodies were cremated. Archaeologists have found the remains of men, women, and children on the island, and it's estimated that around 50% of the soil on the island is made up of ash, which makes a very good fertilizer for the wild grapevines that now call the island home. While death lingered in the air and the soil, the island wouldn't remain out of use forever. In 1922, a psychiatric hospital was built on the island. Unfortunately, many of the terrible practices that have been used to treat people with mental health problems throughout history were put to use in the hospital. What exactly happened there is more legend than history. Some claim the lead doctor performed shocking and damaging experiments on patients that only caused suffering and wouldn't lead to a cure. Stories claim the ghosts of the patients he mistreated caused a mental breakdown, and the doctor also lost his life on the island. The hospital was closed in 1968, and the island was sold to a private owner. Since then, it's passed hands several times. The dark history of the island and the supposed ghosts that haunt the area scare off many owners. It's officially closed to the public, but thrill seekers and those harvesting grapes still take boats to explore the island. There are efforts to reopen the island and allow the public to use it, but so far, no plans have been put in place. Number 2. Today, Changi Beach in Singapore is an area of natural beauty, well loved by the locals who visit for picnics on the sea. But a war memorial that lies in the shade of a tree hints at a dark history that allegedly still haunts the beach. Like many parts of East Asia during World War II, what is today Singapore was invaded by the Japanese army. Civilians and opposition forces alike were treated with extreme cruelty. Thousands lost their lives in a systematic purge of those of Chinese descent, and the beach was one place where this tragic loss of life took place. 66 innocent men lost their lives on the beach on February 20th, 1942. They were bound by ropes and forced to walk in groups of 8 or 10 to the water's edge where the punishment would take place. Exactly who the men were has been the subject of legends over the years. Some say a group of Chinese prisoners of war sabotaged the engines of some Japanese fighter planes. When the area came under attack from the US, many planes were grounded due to the sabotage, while others crashed. According to the story, the prisoners and a group of men from the nearby village were rounded up and interrogated before becoming the 66 victims that are memorialized today. After the war ended, many Japanese soldiers and officials were put on trial for war crimes. These were not only the deaths in Singapore, but crimes against civilians and prisoners of war across the continent. Over several years, 135 men were found guilty of these crimes, and their lives ended on the same beach. According to urban legends, the souls of those that lost their lives on the beach lingered there decades later. It's known as one of the most haunted places in the world. Those who visit the beach at night have supposedly heard the sounds of screams and crying. Others have claimed to have seen floating heads searching for their bodies and unexplained holes in the sand that look like graves. The urban legends are disputed by many, but it doesn't change the area's disturbing past. Number 1. There are countless people who have lost their lives while trying to climb the mountains in the Himalayas. Many bodies are never recovered and remain as reminders of the dangers in such extreme conditions. Most of the deaths can be explained, but there are a collection of hundreds of bodies lying in a lake that remain a mystery. Rup Kund is a glacial lake lying high up in the Himalayas. It's surrounded by glaciers and a collection of 3 peaks in North India. The lake is extremely isolated. Even the nearest village is a 4-day trek. It wasn't until 1942 that it was revealed to the wider world when a British forest ranger reported a lake of skeletons while patrolling. At first, it was assumed that these were Japanese soldiers trying to sneak through the mountains for a land invasion. However, even though the remains were pretty well preserved by the conditions, it became clear that they were much too old. Further investigations found the remains of between 300 and 800 people in the lake, but for decades, that was all that was known about the people that lost their lives. There were numerous theories. One suggested an ancient army perished in the mountains. One local folk song told the story of a king and his wife who were on a pilgrimage with a large entourage when they suffered the wrath of a Hindu goddess. Recent analysis of a sample of the remains revealed some incredible findings. The people didn't die of a single event, and they didn't all come from the same place. Investigators discovered the remains belonged to 3 different genetic groups. Some matched with people from modern East Asia. Another group matched with people from modern Eastern Mediterranean. Those from South Asia were the oldest remains. They were dated between 600 and 985 CE, and all didn't die at once. The rest of the remains were dated between the 17th and 20th century, and may have all died in one event. No armor was discovered on any of the bodies, indicating they weren't soldiers at all. The recent analysis revealed more questions. How a group of people with European ancestry wound up in the mountains is currently unexplained. Even why a more local group of people climbed up to the remote lake on several occasions over a period of hundreds of years is also a mystery. The lake is now somewhat of a tourist attraction, but while the reasons why hundreds of people lost their lives is still unknown, the area remains both creepy and mysterious. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.